Hello and welcome back to the County Chat channel. We have finally got through our preview, so thankfully the next word I was saying there is not a preview for this episode. We're kind of getting through to, I guess, a mid-season review. I guess we're just sticking with the review and those kind of words, and slightly official words, if you will. But we're kind of going through, and this time doing just a whole division. So we're doing Division 2 first, and kind of going through the sort of storylines, the headlines, what's been sort of, you know, keeping the sort of the journalists ticking away, and what has been the talking points for Division 2 so far this season, how good have the teams been and where they've sort of ranked compared to how I expected them maybe to do, and then going in on sort of the best players, and then we'll finish this episode, hopefully, well not hopefully, with a sort of team of the season so far. And just kind of, going through the kind of highlight, the key players, the players who, deserve a little bit of love for their first half of the season. And the teams who deserve a little love, and maybe a little bit of the other way of the teams that have done particularly badly. We won't linger on players who haven't done particularly badly, because that's just, it's not really a nice way to be, linger on the bad stuff. So anyway, sort of kicking it off, you might be wondering why the England cap is on. We do a cap every episode for those previews. But the reason is because Leicestershire are top of Division 2, and I wore this cap for the Leicestershire preview, so I thought it was only fitting in the little intro that I'd be wearing such a hat. Though, as you sort of may have sort of tipped a cap to there a little bit, it's going to be a slightly different episode this time. We're going to try something slightly different. So doing a little intro, here I am, chatting away to you as I always do. But we're going to kind of cut away with some brilliant editing skills that I'm sure I'll show. And we'll do a little bit of screen recording. I'm going to go around sort of almost showing the processes of how I found the information that I use for these episodes, but I guess it's more the case of you can sort of visualize these teams and how they've been doing and where they stack up on games. We can go and click on some scoreboards and all that kind of thing. So using the wonderful place that is ESPN Cricket Info, and which also has plenty of articles about cricket and the county championship and all that good stuff. And then, as I say, we'll get to a little team of the season that I've made up on a little note page, and we'll chat through that at the end. So, but hopefully that will sort of take us through for a normal little episode here, and just a little bit of a as I say, a little bit of a shout out to the teams that have done well. So anyway, kind of sort of bye for now with my face, but you'll be seeing a lot more, or hearing a lot more of my voice, I guess. Anyway, I'll see you in a bit. Well, hello, we are back now, and we're on a sort of different side of it, and we are now doing the sort of screen recording aspect of it. So as I say, we'll sort of go team by team, talk about their best bits, and sort of just chat away about the team. So you can see the table there. Leicestershire kicking us off in first, with Derbyshire second, Glamorgan third, Gloucestershire fourth, Northamptonshire fifth, Middlesex sixth, Lancashire seventh, and Kent in eighth. So for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you'll see that the two relegated sides from last year are rock bottom of the table. And sort of Derbyshire and Leicestershire, who are two of the sort of worst teams from last year, are right at the top of the table. So that's been a bit of a fun thing for the County Championship Division 2 in 2025. It has been a bit of subverted expectation, maybe. It's done a little bit differently to sort of, I guess, how I definitely expected it to go to a certain extent. And it's been interesting to see how it's played out. And I think there's been quite a lot of good games. But anyway, sort of the inverse of how we've done it with the previews, we're going to actually go sort of from first to last here. So we'll be kicking off with Leicestershire, the winners of the season so far, if the season were to end today. So we'll kick off with a sort of just have a look at their sort of fixtures so far this season. And they started off with a big win in Cardiff, and then have had a few draws away at Manchester and at home against Derbyshire, and then have won all their games on from that point. And it's been an interesting one with Leicestershire, I think. And as you can see there, with a little tip of the cap to the wicket takers that Leicestershire have had, is that they've kind of been built on their bowling success. They have such a depth of bowling. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because it's very similar, or eerily similar even, to sort of the success that Surrey have had over the course of the last 4 years at this point. And it's the kind of case that they bat very deep, but also have bowling kind of throughout their team. So have a look. I guess we'll just have a click on a random score sheet and just have a look at the sort of the team that they have. So they're two very classical opening batters, and then Hanscom and Hill and Cox are all batters. But aside from that, you've got Rian Ahmed, who's their frontline spinner, who bats at 3. Ian Holland, who's been the best bowler in the division, and he's their sort of a middle order batter. Logan Van Beek, who's sort of again second to him, and Ben Green, who are certified bowling all-rounders. And then Scriven himself, I mean, like in no other team would he be at 10. And Josh Hull to be fair, is a bit of a rabbit. But it's basically been the kind of the story of their season, really, is their ability to kind of consistently be at the top of the sort of the wicket taking charts, and that's why they've won so many games. They've won 5, and no one else has won more. No one's won more than 3 with Glamorgan there, as you can see. So it's an interesting one, and they've kind of seemed to have sort of just snapped it. And Leicestershire, again, had been a bit of a team, and I'm not going to say a joke team because, no team is a joke, but in the sense of they never seemed like a real promotion threat. And if we get onto the the County Championship Division 2 most wickets so far this season. And I've just done a little bit of a classic Command F for you guys here. So you can see all of their players lit up with a LEI. So yeah, they've literally got Ian Holland, who has bowled, I think, the most overs, taken the most wickets at the lowest economy. I mean, he's just been the best bowler so far in the County Championship Division 2. And again, I think statistically, probably in the County Championship, full stop. Logan Van Beek has been just a brilliant sort of right-hand man to him. He's kind of just playing really, really well. He's played even one less game and has still got those wickets right high up there. Ben Green has been just sort of, I mean, if sort of Ian Holland didn't exist, I'd be talking about Ben Green as having an unbelievable season with a bowling average of under 20 and an economy of under 2.5. Tom Scriven, again, just brilliant over here with another guy you just would be talking a lot more about. And again, obviously, there's always the case where if these bowlers are all bowling well, you generally have lower cumulative bowling averages because you think you're getting through the top order quicker and then you're getting into the bottom order quicker, and then everyone sort of shares around wickets. Josh Hull, again, having a good season, not playing as much. They always like to try and protect him as much as they can. The sort of 6'8", 22-year-old or whatever he is. Ben Mike, again, another guy who plays in and out of the team. Very similar to Ben Green, above him, and he just doesn't play as much. But again, they're sort of players who he's a really talented batter. Let's have a look at Ben Mike. He'll have a batting average in the mid-20s, and his bowling average is very elevated throughout his whole career. But they're just this season they've all just seemed to found it all at once, sort of thing. And you see. We'll go down a bit further. I think we'll find Rayan Ahmed here. Exactly, his leg spin. I mean, again, you'd think for how good that's been, 20 bowling average of 22, economy well below 3 for a leg spinner, you'd be bowling a lot more overs, but just quite simply he hasn't needed to. Chris Wright's probably the older statesman. He's kind of become almost a bowling coach because all these young bowlers have just basically done brilliant. So yes, I guess that's been what's winning them games, and I went on a lot about in all of the previews about how bowlers win you games and how getting those 20 wickets is what obviously gets you over the line. I mean, that's just obvious. That's just maths. But I think Leicestershire have really shown that because as I've written in my sort of mini script, if you will, that they don't have a batter in the top 15 for runs. So this is all in run scoring. You've got Lewis Hill down here, and I think he is literally 15th, or maybe he's 15th, record rank 15th. And yeah, he's 454 runs, average of under 50. So he's been their best batter and he's been brilliant. But it's not like he's not doing stuff like over here. You see the better batters we'll get onto for other teams, where their best batter is already getting well up in the sort of hundreds, and 2 or 300s or whatever. Whereas Leicestershire have always had a kind of consistently more modest sort of run scoring and a bit more of a collective. Hanscom, very similar season. Budinger, very similar. Rayan Ahmed himself, a 400-run season. All of them between 4.54 and 3.95. They're sort of best batters. Ollie Cox, brilliant wicketkeeper batter. Again, having a very good season for a wicketkeeper batter. Ian Holland, who again I think he can be let off for maybe having a sort of quieter batting thing that he has than usual because he's been the best bowler in the county. Logan Van Beek, again, bowling all-rounder. Ben Green hasn't really performed brilliantly yet, but again, 215 runs at 23 from your number 9. You'll take those every day. And as I say, Rishi Patel, who is a really, really talented opening bat, is batting well below his career averages. I'll be interesting. So 20, let's see what his career averages. I reckon mid-30s, maybe low 30s. But he's a very talented cricketer who is just not. Not getting the sort of maybe the love or, not the love, he's getting the luck or the run you would expect. But you'd expect him to do even better than that and keep doing well. Tom Scriven, Ben Mike, as I mentioned earlier. Chris Wright, I didn't realise in his one innings so far this season he got 74. So again, it kind of shows that they've had this kind of runs by almost everyone's just chipped in for not loads, and they've just done brilliantly. It'll be interesting to see, if we go on to sort of more fixtures and how they're looking for the future. They're going, away. So yeah, a couple of home games straight off the rip when they come back in mid-June against Middlesex and Glamorgan. I mean, again, they'll have to perform well, but I'm seeing a lot of Leicester, so they've got to play a lot of games still at home. And it's not like they've been lucked out with just brilliant performances. So anyway, that's sort of, I guess, a Leicestershire update, if you will, and we'll move down the table. And the team I pretty much wrote off totally with Derbyshire. I sort of said that Derbyshire would be bottom. I'd say they'd be the wooden spoon. If I was honest, I was almost a bit dismissive at one point with Derbyshire, and sort of DER. There we are. And I was almost dismissive of kind of where they would end up being. They've not won many games, as you see here. They've won 2 and then drawn 5. So they've kind of consistently stuck around. And been in games, but they've just not gone over the line. They won the first game of the season against Gloucestershire, and then lots of draws, and then absolutely smashed Kent again at home just before the break in the season. I guess the big talking point for them, and you would have seen at the top of the batting scores, is, they are still on LEI for the batting. DE. Oh my lord, trying to do this one-handed. Never goes well. God, getting so many... Peter's getting annoyed at me. So yeah, Caleb Jewell, who I kind of spoke about as if I wasn't sure he was going to be brilliant enough for them and do well enough. I knew he could score at a clip, and he's proven exactly that. He scored consistently kept scoring 50s and then just went massive for a 2-3-2. I think that was in that win against Kent. I could be wrong. Let's have a look. 5-8. Yeah, got to be there. 5-8-7 for 5. Yeah. Here he is, gets this brilliant 2-3-2. But before then, he'd just been kind of consistently getting 50s quickly, and then scores, this big 100, 2-3-2. And he's been a brilliant signing. He's kind of been, what they would have hoped he would be. And maybe even more, to be honest. Let's go back on to Derbyshire. And so it's been a nice thing for Derbyshire in many ways. I've just to mention Wayne Madsen, as per usual, averaging well above 50, scoring lots of runs. He is inevitable. He is like the Thanos of Division 2 county cricket. Look at those numbers. I could look at that all day. 16,000 runs is nothing to sniff at in first-class cricket. He is just one of those players who just never seems to falter, Wayne Madsen. Sort of beyond those, Martin Anderson's had a really good season, above 50 as a bowling all-rounder. But sort of beyond them, Harry Kame's not got 100 yet, neither's Brooke Guest. There's sort of other top-order batters. David Lloyd, again, a few 50s. And Lewis Rees, who's moved down the order, which has worked incredibly well for them. We'll get onto him in a minute. But I don't want to say that the performance is going to be short-lived, because I think, quite frankly, they could sustain this kind of success, not losing many games because of their batting and drawing a lot of games because of their batting. But I think, as you can probably imagine where I'm going here, the kind of inverse of Leicestershire, their bowling, they've got wicket takers in their bowling. Lewis Rees obviously has had an unbelievably good start to the season, and Blair Tickner has had I say it's not a brilliant start. It's a bowling average still above 30. I sort of stand by with what I said with Blair Tickner with that economy, well above 3.5. But it's just the case of, I just don't think they have enough bowling, really, depth-wise. They don't really have a spinner to write home about. Jack Morley. I think Jack Morley's good enough to continue to take wickets and be a good option for them. And as I mentioned at the story, I sort of thought he would outdo Alex Thompson in the end for that one spinner role, and he kind of has. But I think it's just the case for me with Derbyshire. I just don't see them continuously winning a lot more games, and I think teams below them are going to start, sneaking into the thing. But I do want to talk about Lewis Rees for a minute, because I think his season is really worth talking about. As you saw with his batting, he's kind of really gone on one in the middle order, but he's been consistently an opening batter for the last, probably 3 or 4 years, and he's averaging in the 70s there. From sort of 6 or 7 usually, and then has also sort of began opening the bowling more than he used to. And his bowling average of 21, 23 wickets. He's played one less game than a lot of cricketers have. I say that a lot of team players have played less than 7 as a seam bowler, but you know what I mean. And he's had just a really, really solid season. I think that's a move that's really worked, because then they've been able to match Caleb Jewell and put him where he should be, obviously opening the batting, and then put David Lloyd at the top of the lineup, which has worked well for him as well. But yeah, as I mentioned, if you see, you get down to Blair Tickner, he's on a bowling average of 31, and then you get to Zach Chappell, who's their opening bowler, and his bowling average is all the way up at 47. It's not to say that they can't, lower them, and, people like Jack Morley, again, 42, and Anuj Dal, incredibly good bowler. I really like Anuj Dal, really good cricketer. He hasn't clearly scored that many runs because you didn't see him over there, but 30 and, good level. Martin Anderson having okay season, and Lloyd, and a few others. Aitchison's not played that many games clearly. But yeah, it's sort of a case where I just think the bowling still holds them back. It was kind of what I said, right? Why I didn't think they would do brilliantly at the start of the season. And yeah, I think that I'm going to stick with that prediction. I don't think Derbyshire will go up. I think Leicestershire, I feel like I didn't really give a lasting thing on that. But I do think Leicestershire are in a really good position. I think if they didn't, they'd be really frustrated with themselves. Anyway, moving on to Glamorgan. Glamorgan, I couldn't believe were in third when I kind of went to do this video. I remembered the start of the season again. They lost to Leicestershire very handedly. They lost to Middlesex very handedly. And in my head, they hadn't really won that many games, but they have gone on a 3-game winning streak just before the break. Beat Kent, beat Northamptonshire and Middlesex in back-to-back weeks, and have got all the way up to third because of that. They're the second highest win tally after Leicestershire, so I think it's proof that Glamorgan are going very well. And yeah, I think what's been the thing above all things to be excited about if you are a Glamorgan fan has been obviously the breakout of sort of the very rarely seen ambidextrous star of county cricket, which is Ben Kellaway. He bowls right arm off spin and left arm off spin, whilst also being an incredibly good batter. So it's been quite, it's been cool to see him, and I think he's been the sort of star of that team in many ways. And I think, they're kind of the consistent heart of that team has been the batting for years. I've written, and again, the little mini script I've done for this is that, Kieran Carson, Colin Ingram and Sam Northeast, shockingly enough, are all averaging in and around. Sam Northeast a bit more lean towards 39, but Colin Ingram 56, Carson 43. They've kind of just got that consistent averages between 40 and 50, and they just don't stray from that. And then you just stick Kellaway in there, a nice little in-between all-rounder who's just had a brilliant season, averaging up towards 70, and it just does it as a fair whack as well, all at the same time whilst being their spinner and having a very very solid spinning season to get at to. And when we get to the bowling, I think it's really worth talking about is that Andy Gorvin, the medium pacer. He is bowling averaging under 20. The economy's a bit high, but he's really been taking wickets at a real rate, and has been a really important aspect of those kind of match-winning games. Gorvin's taken wickets in all of those, I think. And, Tim van der Hoogten is almost dead on his career averages, those numbers you see there. He's always going to play, he's going to post, and he's always going to play and bowl well. So he's been brilliant. Sister Fernando, I think he struggled to begin with. Sorry, excuse me. But really built into this season. And he kind of, I think he'll have gone home now. I think he was just to the end of May. I think he was just the start of the season. But, he ended up having pretty serviceable numbers. James Harris, similarly, pretty similar to his career averages. And Ben Kellaway, as mentioned, has been a really good spinner. Ed Leonard has been a good signing, just generally. And I think he's been, again, another good sort of third or fourth seaming option. Zain Al Hassan, who I mentioned in the preview because he went about last season bowling 80 overs without a wicket. As you can see, he ended that drought with his lovely 8 wickets there, and he's bowled a lot of overs again. Incredibly economic bowler who also sort of bats to the top of the order. But when he got that first wicket, it was actually of a lad I know, and I had to be honest and be very happy for him, because it was just like, imagine, I can't even imagine, like, I've had dry spells as a bowler, but imagine bowling a whole season's worth of overs, 80 overs, and not taking one. It would just be very, very demoralising. And sort of speaking of the opposite of that, it was just a masterstroke. Ben Kellaway had to miss a game, and I found out why. He had to miss a game because he was doing his biology finals. Of course he is, just one of those people. Clearly he's just very clever, very good at sport, one of them. And they signed Matthew Kuhneman in the sort of build-up for his World Test Championship final, which he, likely won't play in. But he took 7 wickets and was bowled them to victory in that game against Middlesex that we were looking at over here. And he took 7 wickets at an average of 10 with an economy of 2.145. Not bad going for sort of one game. Less said about England's premier spinner and his time in Glamorgan. Can't believe he still gets picked for England, to be fair. But, anytime he puts an England shirt on, he seems to do well. So, Shoaib Bashir, for those who hadn't connected the dots, 152 bowling average, by the way. Anyway, just in a general sense, Glamorgan doing, very well, really. And it sort of surprised me. I think they've got with Kellaway and their batters, they've got a fair consistency for success, if you will. I think the difference is, they're obviously losing a sister Fernando. They won't have Kuhneman all season. So it'll be interesting to see how they stack up. Again, I'm not buying into it maybe as much as you could. I don't see Glamorgan staying near the top of the table this season. I think it's more, again, with that depth of bowling, really, for me, which, again, I feel like it often comes down to with any of these teams. That's Glamorgan. I think they've done very well, though. I think it surprised me how well they did. On to Gloucestershire. Gloucestershire, I think, have kind of graded out almost as I expected. I think they were kind of mid-table side, and I think they're going to remain a sort of mid-table side. Lost to Derbyshire at the start of the season and just had quite a lot of draws. Lost a very close game at Bristol to Leicestershire. Won a close game against Kent, and aside from that, have been a lot of draws. But they've been sort of in and around. They've been in the contest for all the games. Maybe not the Derbyshire one. They did get kind of blown away in that. But it's just on a general sense. We'll get on our little thing so you can just see the bowlers and the batters who've done well. Simply put, for me, we'll do the batting first because you might get the impression after I've done the batting. I think it's safe to say the batting has been their strength. Bracey, brilliant season so far. Wicketkeeper batter, averaging 60. You take my money. Ollie Price has been brilliant at 3. That innings at Old Trafford was absolutely brilliant, 253 not out. And he's just been, he's continued to build on what he sort of, everyone knows of him, incredibly good technique, and has really solidified 3 and Gloucestershire's team. And I think Gloucestershire, as a batting lineup, have probably one of the best in Division 2, maybe just the country, full stop. Miles Hammond, for someone who hasn't scored 100 this season, to be up near 500 runs is an impressive effort. 97, unfortunately, very, very close to it. Cam Green, as I sort of mentioned, I really spoke in hyperbolic terms about Cam Green when him going to Gloucestershire, and he's not been able to bowl. But, averaging 60, nearly 67 with the bat, 467 runs totally, and 300s in, 9 innings. It's not a bad go for your overseas. Skipper, Bancroft, again, you can just bank on him scoring. You can bank on Bancroft to score around an average of 40. Probably total, the runs around the season will be near enough 1,000. Ben Charlesworth at the top of the order has had a really good start, sort of a streaky start, but I think he's just a generally sort of a bit of a streaky player. And then Van Buren, and if you go down there, you got Pricey, you've got another Tom Price. He's got a few runs and a few here and there, but mostly bowlers. Speaking of bowlers, I think that's where Gloucestershire come up short. I think they have, Ajit Singh Dale, Tom Price, really good opening bowlers. Zaman Akhtar got picked for England Lions, which I must admit was a bit of a head scratcher for me, with a bowling average of 46 and an economy of nearly 4. And it was safe to say India A seemed to dine out on active bowling. But I think it's just, for me, it's the depth of their bowling. I don't think they have the depth. They don't really have a frontline spinner of note. Ollie Price does the best he can, but again, I just think he's a number 3 batter who bowls very, very handy off spin, but particularly very handy white ball off spin. And they just don't really have a spinner who just can take games away from teams. I think that's the reason why I can't see Gloucestershire going really any higher than the mid-table teams. I think their batting is good enough for them to kind of continue to stay there. And we'll get onto the point system in a minute, because I think draws are proving to be very valuable. And Gloucestershire have drawn a lot of games and, done well off the back of it. Anyway, on to Northamptonshire. Oh, that was misclick. That was bound to happen at some point today. Northamptonshire, onto their games so far. So yeah, Northamptonshire kind of have found a bit of form, but I guess they've been a bit streaky sort of throughout. I think, they lost to Kent in that I got a low-scoring affair to begin the season, and have drawn a lot of games, but also lost a lot of games, but somehow sort of find themselves pretty much bang on mid-table. I guess it's just the way cricket can go sometimes. For me, usually I feel like people probably get bored of me talking about the importance of bowling. But for me, the real issue for Northamptonshire, and we'll go on to look at it right away, is the batting. It's been a real struggle, unless, Saif Saib has had a brilliant season so far. 600 runs, 604 runs, at an average of 50, 300, 350s. That is brilliant, and it's well above, not well above his career averages. Actually, no, it is well above his career averages. He averages now about 30, but to start the season, it would have been lower than 30. And he's, having his season so far. For Northamptonshire's perspective, I really hope it continues because I think they really need it. Captain Proctor, I think he's one of those players you can, again, similar to Bancroft, you can always bank in a good amount of runs at a good average. He's one of those really gritty cricketers, Luke Proctor. I love watching him play. But yeah, players like James Sales, who had a big breakout year last year, Lewis McManus, the keeper, Vasconcelos, Bartlett. I mean, these two particularly, having, these guys have batted in every single game in the top 5, I believe. Bartlett would be 5, and I think Vasconcelos is their opener, averaging near enough 20, if not a little bit shy of it in Vasconcelos' case. I think this is an interesting one. I just think the batting's just not quite there. You go even lower, Rob Keogh, who's, had real good stints with the bat in Division 1, not even that long ago, an average as low as 18. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. I just don't think the batting is quite there, basically. The bowling, on the other hand, I mean, they've had one of the signings of the season with Calvin Harrison. Oh, that wasn't purposeful. Okay, well, we'll get rid of that sort of horrible view of it. But Calvin Harrison has had a brilliant season. 21 wickets, average of 24, and economy of 2.5. A leg spinner to be able to do that at this side of the season, have one of the best economies, if you're not named Ian Holland, in the county championship, is really, really impressive for a spinner. And I think he's really found a home there. He's technically still on loan, I think, but it will be interesting to see how long that lasts, bearing in mind his home club is Nottinghamshire, and they have Liam Patterson-White and, more importantly, Farhan Ahmed. So Calvin Harrison move to Northamptonshire kind of feels like something that will almost certainly happen over at some point. And yeah, as I've written here, it started as a 2-match stint, but he's now played 6 matches for the county, so I'll be interested to see sort of how that continues. As you can see here, Harry Conway, Northamptonshire unfortunately has kind of a bit of like a home away from home for Australians, and Harry Conway has found that home and bowled brilliantly. A sort of average of 20.75, economy under 3, wickets at 20, all in under not even 5 games. I mean, it's pretty much half the games, and he's done that well. Ben Sanderson coming back, I think, is a really big, huge move for them and a huge moment for their bowling. I think they need him to be really, really good. Justin Broad's had a bit of a down year following last year. Liam Guthrie, the new left-arm quick they're excited from, another Aussie who's got a British passport. He has done badly. Not badly, but, not done what they were hoping he might do. And aside from that, Rafi Weatherall, I think he must have got an injury because he was started the season really, really well. I haven't actually read about that injury, but I'm sure it was thus. So yeah, Northamptonshire, as I say, I guess it's as big of a mixed bag as you get when you sort of win only 1, draw 3, lose 3. I guess it's more negative than it is a mixed bag, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, now we move on to sort of the big 3. I mean, I think if you were going money wise, size, fandom base wise, Middlesex, Lancashire, and Kent, especially Middlesex and Lancashire, would be easily the biggest 3 and maybe biggest 2 of these 8. So we're kicking off with Kent. With Middlesex. And, Middlesex, again, have just had a similar sort of vibe to Northamptonshire, I guess, and they are literally a point apart, is that they've really just had a mixed bag. At no point have they ever been in good form or maybe even particularly bad form. Lose 1 at Kent, win 1 at home against Glamorgan, who are well above them. Beat Kent this time, lose to Leicestershire, who are obviously well above them. So it's an interesting one, and then they got absolutely smashed at Glamorgan. It's been an interesting one for Middlesex. I think out of the 3, I think they're probably the least likely to stay near the bottom of the table. That's just, my opinion. They've got probably one of the more well, we had one of the better bowlers so far this season in Toby Rowland-Jones, as we'll get onto in a minute. And they've also had perhaps the best, Middlesex have been mid. I only just had that thought, but Middlesex have been mid to their initials. Holden has had a really, really good season, 663 runs, batting at 3. Especially start the season, he looked like it was hard. It was almost impossible to get him out. Ben Geddes, I think, has been a really good signing. I mean, it's an interesting one. He only averages in the low 30s, but he's batting 6. He's had to come in some really tricky situations. So I think Ben Geddes is one which will really pay off. And again, just Surrey batter. I feel like you always just back him. Jack Davies, as much as I was very, very negative about him before the season, he's actually had an alright season for him as a wicketkeeper batter. He's averaging just under 30, which for most people would be great, but I think his averages in first class cricket are sort of nearer 22, 21. So for him, that's been a good start for the season. And but the big standout for the issues that they've had: Lewis Deploy, Ryan Higgins, Eshkenazi, who's had a few goes, and Holman's actually been quite good. But Deploy and Higgins are probably the ones you'd look out for. You'd expect their career averages. I think Lewis Deploy's will be in the 40s, and Higgins would probably the high 30s, and they're in those low to mid 20s. So the batting's just not been good enough. And most noticeable was Sam Robson, who I think I described as a run machine before this season. The machine must be a little bit broken. And to be fair, he's not played in all the games, so I hadn't clocked that as an injury, but maybe Sam Robson also got injured. Nathan Fernandez really struggled at the top of the order to begin the season. I think we're now just getting to bowlers for Middlesex, So I think for them it's been a case of a few players not really performing, but also a bit of a mixed bag. The bowling, I think is not as bad. They signed Zafar Gohar, which I thought was a really good signing, and I think he's proven to be that. I think he's been exactly what they sort of expected him to be. Ryan Higgins has been a bit more himself when it comes to the bowling. Henry Brooks, not brilliant, and Dane Pat. I think the one I was sort of getting to or alluding to, when I saw Dane Patterson had been signed by Middlesex for the season up to the World Test Championship, I thought it was a brilliant signing. In the case of Nottinghamshire, he'd been there and he'd been brilliant. But for your overseas quick, I mean, an average of 40, nearly 44, just isn't really good enough. He just didn't really do as well as you'd hoped. Blake Cullen has had has had a pretty terrible start, but he's looked good at points. It's an interesting one with Middlesex. I think they just are in a situation where, they really need a bit of help. And I think, other than Holden, the batting has struggled a bit, as we were mentioning. If only they had a member of the Fab Four on the way or playing in their T20 Blast games, and he's going to stick around. Oh, Dad is lucky. They have Kane Williamson, and he is doing exactly that. So part of the reason I think Middlesex will start moving up is Kane Williamson. I don't think it's as simple as that, of course. I think the bowlers need to start picking up their work as well. It's a bit of a tough. Oh my God, I just nearly knocked over my entire microphone. I really apologise for anyone wearing headphones there. I don't think there's anything I can really do to help that in the edit. Now we move on to Lancashire. I cannot get my head around how Lancashire aren't in last. We'll obviously get on to their season so far and all the things that have been going on with it. But I can't really get my head around how they're in sort of one of the positions above that. I just don't really see how that works in the point scoring system. We'll go back to it now. I just was getting that all sorted. But if you think they've drawn 5 games, but they've been nowhere near winning any of those games, I think that's a lie. They nearly won this game against Derbyshire at Old Trafford. But aside from that, they've either lost or been, thinking about this Leicestershire game here or this Gloucestershire one here. It's just been, they've always been on the back foot. And I think, to me, I don't know, it would be suggested the point scoring is just slightly off. I don't know. I'm not the one making those decisions, but it just seems crazy to me. And as I've written here, Lancashire have in many ways been this story for Division 2. I mean, they're still winless. They've lost. They are now a coach and captain down so far this season. If we go back to this, Harris has signed a contract extension. Crisis Club. Dale Bekenstein leaves Lancashire. If you look at all these are match reports, and then aside from that, all the kind of headline news has been around Lancashire, and maybe needless to say, but not for a good thing. If you have LAN, you get Rowland-Jones and Holland coming up, but their best bowler doesn't come all the way until Balderson. I think you may ask, as a sort of cricket fan, is it as bad as it looks? And I think, the start of the season probably is as bad as they could have genuinely hoped. I mean, I guess the one thing you have to talk about is they've had far and away the best batter in the county championship. Marcus Harris has been absolutely brilliant. He's had a few games where he's got out cheaply recently, but I think the shock when I was seeing those scorecards, I think really emphasises how good of a season he's had. Faced the most balls out of anyone, scored the most runs out of anyone. You know, it's as simple as he's just been batting a lot and been batting very, very well. He's become the captain as Keaton Jennings got rid of it for himself, or resigned is usually the word they use there, Wolf. And then Luke Wells got moved down the order, moved him back to the opener, and he scored 141. So maybe it's a case of Lancashire doing a bit of overthinking and it's not helped. The batting hasn't been the problem. I think you can see here, you know, a team that hasn't won a game, you're not going to blame the fact that this guy bats 4, he opens the batting, he bats 6 and opens. These are guys right in the top of their lineup, and they've all got more than 500 runs. Matthew Hurst, 410. You know, Bohannon, who's had not a great season, still nearly 400. And Balderson, not brilliant, but, you know, he's been scoring some runs. You get onto their bowling, and it's Balderson again, but a bowling average, no, not below 30, well above his career average. You know, Tom Bailey, a bowling average over 40, Hartley over 40. You know, and for those who might not be as au fait with cricket, you know, things, it's literally runs per wicket. It's just how many runs you concede before you take a wicket. And if you have those nearing 40, it's never going to be good. Now, the light at the end of the tunnel is the fact that James Anderson is back from injury. Everyone knows how good James Anderson is, but the fact that in his one game he did this kind of proves just how good he is. 15.6, 2.7 economy. If he can play pretty much all the games remaining, I genuinely think he is good. He is good enough that it is as simple as that. That, you know, players around him will just start bowling so much better if they have. You know, I think people like Anderson Phillip, Will Williams, and Tom Bailey, they're all very good bowlers. I just don't think maybe any of them are. Actually, I think that's harsh on Tom Bailey. Tom Bailey has definitely been a leader of bowling attacks in his past. He just had a bad season so far. But I think what I was going to say was that they're not your kind of typical leaders of an attack, maybe. And I guess that's an interesting, you know, place to be in. But if you have Jimmy Anderson coming in from the Anderson end and leading this bowling lineup, it will be interesting to see how it goes. And, you know, let's have a look at the places they're playing. Yeah, that doesn't give us a location. So they actually got plenty of away games. I mean, again, it's a bit of a crazy one that Lancashire are in a position they are in. I'll be interested to see, you know, you would have thought, and again, I've written here, you know, they really have missed Jimmy Anderson, and going back to the bowling, you can see all of that. But given he's literally playing his first full season so far for Lancashire is this season, you'd think after sort of 15 years kind of consistently in the test team, they'd have got used to not having Jimmy Anderson. But I guess it's as simple as, you know, you can't always prepare for stuff like that. And maybe they just, you know, people like, you know, Tom Bailey, I don't think they'd ever expect Tom Bailey to have a season like this so far. Just to have a click on Tom Bailey's account, you know, bowling average under 25, economy of under 3, and his is above 4 and above 40, I think it is. Where were we? Tom Bailey, I don't know, above 3.5. But yeah, you can see it's going long. Right, I'm noticing this is a long recording already, so let's get on it. Kent, the final team. The crazy thing about Kent is that they start the season well. They were top of the table to begin the season. They beat Northamptonshire, they beat Middlesex, and I think everyone would have been like, wow, they chased down 316 to beat Middlesex. That's looking good. Had a draw, lose to Middlesex, and then they've just gone on a terrible tear of losing big. You know, they lost to Glamorgan by an innings, lose by Gloucestershire in a close game, get smashed by Derbyshire. So it's an interesting one, and they've somehow ended up 1 point beneath Kent, beneath Lancashire, despite winning 2 more games. I genuinely don't really understand how that happens. I just think that's an issue with the point system. To me, I can't see how you can win 2 games and be behind a team that's 1-0. Again, my opinion on that matter. But yeah, I think their mixed season has kind of been categorised by their mixed bowling, and we'll get onto this here. You know, people like Nathan Gilchrist has had a very good season in not very many games. I say good season, he's taken a lot of wickets, quite high average and high economy, not high average, but high economy. But, people like Grant Stewart have had really good bowling performances and then had some quite poor ones. Kashivali started very well, has now ended with a bowling average of 50. Joey Everson kind of always lingers around this sort of high 20s, low 3 economy. So I don't think you can point the finger to him. But basically, they invested heavily in overseas bowlers. And it's just not other than Keith Dudgeon, I never really knew how to say his name, who did unbelievably in the one game that they won the start of the season, which I don't know if he was on a one-match deal or if he got injured. I'm not actually sure what the story was with Keith Dudgeon, because he bowled brilliantly in that first game. But so they've had they had Jake Ball on loan, that didn't go particularly well. George Garrett's one of their bowlers. It's just kind of been a case that the bowling has just been nowhere. Their batting, on the other hand, as I mentioned, or I haven't mentioned yet actually, is that Ben Compton has been brilliant. He's been a proper, as you'd expect from Ben Compton, or as you'd expect from the best Ben Compton you could get. High average of the 50s, scoring nearly 700 runs. He's scoring quicker than he usually does, because he's usually a real Dom Sibley type player in the sort of 40s there. Grant Stewart had one big innings, but has batted well throughout. Twanda Mie, similar, had one really good innings. But again, I think him and, I think his talent level is so above 33, and I spoke about him at length in the preview for Kent, and I think he would look at himself and think, I could get a lot more runs than that. Bell Drummond got a 200 and not much else, but I say not much else, but he's scored a bucket loads of his runs in one innings and his average is still 28, so Bell Drummond is definitely well above that level. Benji, he has done very well actually in his mixed chances. Played very well in Grant Stewart when he got that 182. Still not to get 100 yet. I'm sure he will, because his sort of competition in Harry Finch with the gloves, he's had a really terrible season. So it's been an interesting one. I think Benjamin, is sort of angling towards trying to be just a batter, not a wicketkeeper as well. So that kind of helps Harry Finch in that sense. Jack Leaning, who I literally think in my head is the same player as Rob Keogh. And it always confuses me. He's had a really tough season, similar to Keogh, and it'd be interesting to see, how long they persist with someone like him. He's been, been a really good servant for Kent for a long time. Crawley didn't have a brilliant time for them, particularly. He scored a few 50s, as you can see there. Everson's had a really bad time with the bat, and he's someone they would expect a lot more from the bat. Joe Denley, or was that actually Jaden Denley? No, that is Joe Denley. No, that is Jaden Denley. Joe Denley's even worse. Here we are. Oh, he's only played in one game. I see. So it's been just a tough season for Kent. I think that's a really blatantly obvious point. But it's just been a season where it's just seemed to turn around on them so quickly. And before they knew it, they were sort of top of the table. And then by the end of May, they were losing by an innings to Derbyshire, having only taken 5 wickets in the game. So it's one of those things where, you can just get away from your fast county cricket, I guess, to a certain extent. So anyway, getting on to the sort of the team of the season, if you will, or the team of the season so far. So I hope it's on a little notepad. Here we go. Wow, that's bigger than I was hoping for. So we can have a little look. County Chat, Division 2 team of the season so far. Opening up, we've got Caleb Jewell, who, as we've been mentioning, has had just a brilliant season so far, scoring buckets of runs. Ben Compton, as I was just mentioning, he's had a brilliant season. I mean, Kent at the foot of the table, but it just kind of proves how cricket is a weird game that you can still be in the team. We'll get on to Marcus Harris in a minute for the same reason. It's just been proper run scoring at the top of the lineup, and I think they'd actually work quite well together. Ben Compton slightly more diminutive. Caleb Jewell, quite an aggressive player. Max Holden, as I mentioned, just again, the weight of runs really helps him. Bats at 3 naturally as well, which obviously for the illustrious County Chat Division 2 team of the season is a massive deal that he bats 3. Left-hand batter, a really, really solid. I just read the top 6 are all left-handed batters. It's just the way it goes. I don't discriminate to lefties. Marcus Harris, again, I think he's been the batter of the probably both divisions so far this season. Again, in a really terrible Lancashire team, he's kind of drawn them probably at least 2 of those games because he just batted for long enough. Saif Thaib, as I say, seriously good season so far, well above his averages, and bats in that sort of 5 slot as well. He's got that kind of aggressive middle order approach. Bracey would be our keeper as well. Just a brilliant season. I think it's as simple as that. He's just been scored lots of runs, wicket keeping. He's got very good glove work. And then, yeah, Ian Holland, as I mentioned, kind of the best bowler so far. He also provides a lot with the bat. I think he bats usually in the top 5 for Leicestershire, so it's an interesting one. We've gone back to back with Leicestershire here, but I think they've had such a good start that it's, they didn't get anyone in the batting because, as I was mentioned, they haven't scored buckets of runs. But Ben Green, again, his bowling you could go on for hours as well. Like similar to Holland, they've just been economical and wicket taking. Van Beek as well. Again, these guys can all bat very, very well. Van Beek, brilliant bowler, has taken lots of wickets. Calvin Harrison, as I said, this leggy for Northamptonshire, he's been really, really good. And, real respect towards him for doing that well, basically, with leg spin that early on in the season. Toby Rowland-Jones, who I think I'll also make the captain of this team, just out of love for bowling captains. But yeah, he's, again, in a Middlesex team that have been struggling, he has just consistently taken wickets sort of to kind of almost his career averages, kind of norms. So yeah, that's great for him. I'm kind of happy for him. I always like Toby Rowland-Jones. And then I've just sort of done a little bit of tip of the cap to 2 Glamorgan players who've been brilliant, because we didn't get any Glamorgan players in here. I think every other team did. Gloucestershire. I'll do that after. But Ben Kellaway, again, the right arm spinner, the left arm spinner, a brilliant batter who's averaging well above 50. And then Andy Gorvin, a medium pace bowler who's averaging under 20 with the ball. Long may that continue in many ways. So, yeah, there is the County Chat Division 2 team of the season. Back to real-time face Wilf. Well, thank you, behind the screen, Wilf, for such a lovely intro there. But yeah, if we missed, it's just me. If I missed anyone in that team of the season, let us know in the comment section. Have a little look. Just suggest who might be your team of the season so far in Division 2. And yeah, that's kind of it. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's a sort of different kind of episode, similarly to the team of the season thing. If you do have any sort of things that you think about, or you disagree with, or you don't want, you want to see more of my face, I can understand it. It is what it is. But just trying something out there with a little bit of screen recording, because I always think just me talking to the camera for sort of 30 minutes can be a bit dry. It kind of is dry anyway, but that's kind of the content we're in for here. And so, yeah, but thank you for watching, as always, and listening, and looking at me clicking around ESPN Crick Info. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't yet. There should be some playlists, as always, with the previews if you missed any of them, or if you just want to have a look at maybe a specific team that I talked about now, and if you want to check if I was lying about the takes I had before the season. I don't think I am, but I can't say I rewatched the videos before I did them, so maybe I am. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. As I say, all those things I've already said, so I'll see you in the next one. The next one, of course, will be Division 1, doing the exact same thing, or roughly similar to it. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.